In this video, I'm going to go over what's new in IBM Copy Services Manager 627. I'll give a quick product overview and then I'll go into what's new. 627 EG8 on December 13th of 2019. So what is CSM? Well, CSM is a way to simplify your replication on IBM storage system platforms. We provide both fixed block and CKD type replication, and we help you not only manage but monitor as well. So we have RPO monitoring, historical reporting. We can handle thousands of relationships and provide a single point of control across that entire environment, whether it be your CKT or your fixed block environment, your DS8000 or your Spectrum storage system products. We provide replication capabilities across them all. We install on most available platforms, so the Windows, Linux, AIX, ZOS, Linux or Z, and we even come pre-installed on DS8000 HMC now, in case you don't want to manage an extra server, and you have DS8000, it'll be out there for you. We have disaster recovery and high availability capabilities, so we manage both Z system hyperswap and support Power HA hyperswap. We have 3-site to even now 4-site solutions. We also have practice session solutions that will help you practice the way you would recover, so that you're always ensuring that you've practiced on the volumes that you will actually recover to. And then last, we have a number of ways that protect your data, from warning prompts to specific user roles, site awareness, dynamic prompts to tell you make sure you're issuing the right command, event thresholds, and now even dual control support, which we added in a previous release. So you can make sure that if any commands issued are approved by a second user before they continue on. Alright, so what's new? So this is a quick list of what's new. We have a bunch of new items this release. Our last actual release was in the first half of the year. So now we had a good amount of development, and I'm excited to talk these over with you today. Alright, so the first one I want to go over is the scheduled task improvements. So those of you might know, we've added a scheduler within CSM. It allows you to schedule tasks and actions across multiple sessions or within the same session. But we added, you can string together multiple actions, and what we've done in this release is added two new actions that you can perform. So the first one I want to talk about is the wait for percent complete. So what this is you can add an action for wait for percent complete, so that if you say issued a start command to a given role pair in the session, you can specify wait for percent complete for that role pair and say wait till 70% is complete, and then before you want to move to the next one. Or in a more likely case, you want to do a drain, you might add the wait for percent complete, make sure everything's 100% before you actually go to the next action, which might be a suspend to the session. So we've got a number of requests for this type of action, so now that you can build that into your scheduled task and be more scripted. The second action is what we call the validate role pair consistency. So there were a number of times, like in a recover action or flash or something, where before moving on to the next step, the customer wanted me to ensure that the role pair was consistent, because it might, if it wasn't consistent or something happened, the subsequent actions may cause loss of an older copy of the data that's consistent. So we now added the validate role pair consistency, so that it will check a given role pair in a given session at the particular state it's running in that scheduled task, and if the role pair is not consistent, it'll kick out of the scheduled task. Otherwise, it'll keep going. All right, the next one I want to talk about is one we've been getting a lot of requests for quite a while. It's for email alerts. So previously, before this release, we could set up an email listener, but they essentially receive any email user you put into the CSM would receive any and all events that happen throughout the server. So these included, session state changes, config changes, communication failures, RPO triggers, etc. And customers didn't want to always receive all those events. So what we've done is gave the ability to provide categories. So for each of these different categories you see listed, and some, the ones I mentioned just previously, you can provide separate lists of emails. So you can have Bob look at session state change events, while you have Jill look at just the configuration change events. Or you can have, multiple people, Tim and Bob, look at RPO triggers, and maybe your CSM admin look at everything. So you can define different by comma separated email addresses. You can define a list of emails that will be sent for whichever of the types that you want, or a combination of the types. So you can select multiple types if you want as well. So if you want Bob to handle session state change and RPO triggers, you can select those two and add Bob into that list. So we hope this will help minimize the number of events coming in and help focus it on certain events. We still believe in CSM that all of these events that we produce are valuable in some nature, so we do encourage at least somebody to be listening to all events across the server. However, we do understand that some users aren't going to be reacting to all these, and so this is what the alert categories provide. All right, the next one is a feature that a customer requested for essentially what we're going to call locking the practice copy. So after they take a flash on a practice session, they wanted to prevent another flash from occurring until they knew they were done with that flash copy target at the remote site. So you may do a flash, you may do your practice stuff, maybe you do a little bit more, maybe you dump to tape, maybe you do some testing, but you also perhaps scheduled the flash copies on that practice session. Well, you don't want those scheduled flash copies to end up over flashing what you're currently still running jobs against at that remote site. So what this will do is, if you set this option, prevent reflash of practice volume after flash or recover, it will prevent a subsequent flash to that practice session from actually prevent you from being actually allowed to issue a flash command. So it won't even show as an option if that's set. If you set that, issue the flash, you won't be able to see another flash command until you issue the allow practice flash command to the session. So you have to manually specify that command and issue it to that session, and then it unlocks it, and then you can issue another flash. So hopefully this is what the customer is looking for, prevents that extra flash, allows them to finish, and allows them to then manually say when they are actually done with it. All right, the next one is there are some customers, well, let me start with the CLI. CSMCLI, when it starts up, in most cases, the customer runs in like a batch type environment. Well, what happens is each of those calls start up Java from a whole, and there's a performance impact for that. And so what we've found is there is an option within Java called Xquickstart, which does not, it starts up Java differently. I won't go into the details, but starts it up faster, and thus we added the ability to set a Java options.properties file, which will let you specify some of these options. So you can now in Java create a Java options.properties in the CSMCLI directory, install directory. If you specify Xquickstart, it's going to do this quickstart method. But you can also add other Java params, such as the example shown there. XMX512 will give you that much, 512 megabytes of memory for this Java CSM Java runtime, or you can increase that to a gig, etc. So it allows you to adjust those a little bit easier without having to change any of the scripts. And it's fully supported now, so you can specify these in that properties file and it'll pick it up. So hopefully this will improve the performance of some of these batch running jobs where they're invoking the CSMCLI in onesie, twosie shots, so that the Java doesn't take too long to start up. All right, the next one is we've had a request for a while now. We did provide the ability to add copy sets via CSV file a while back, but we never had the ability to remove the copy sets. So there were customers that did a lot of shifting between sessions, and they like the ability to be able to script the removal so that they can add them to remove them from one session and add them to another session. So now we've added in the import CSV command on the CSMCLI a dash action tag, which will allow you to specify add or remove. Add is the default, but if you say dash action remove, the CSV file will be taken in and the remove copy set command will be issued instead, so that it will remove those copy sets from the session. The same CSV file can be used for the add versus the remove, even though we really only look at the copy set ID, so the first H1 volume in each copy set. We don't require you to create different CSV files for an add versus remove. You can just use the same one, so that if you're doing like the example I mentioned earlier, it makes it very simple. Okay, with this 6.2.7 release, we added a couple of GUI enhancements as well. The first one is when you're viewing copy sets. If you go into a session, you click on View Copy Sets. Previously, we would only show the nickname, and so you couldn't, if you'd have to hover over or do stuff, and there was no filter capability, so it's very difficult to find volumes, especially if they had a nickname or you need to sort a certain way. So what we've done is we added additional columns so that you have both the full name and the nickname possibilities, and you can click on the little icon on the top of the table and select which the columns you prefer to see. You can see both of them, you can see one of them. So an example I show, for H1 I'm showing both the full name and the username, but for H2 and H3 I'm decided just to show the full name. You can choose to do it that way. We actually also added the filter box, so if you wanted to filter on, say, a given storage system, GXZ91, you could type that in and it would only show those Z91 volumes. So this provides a much quicker way for you to be able to determine whether volumes are given volumes are in a session. Perhaps you want to make sure that you did actually add them, so you can look it up and type the filter and find them. Or you can sort on this list to make sure that all of the volumes within a given LSS were added to the session as well. The second GUI enhancement, it happens on the session overview panel. What we did was we added the user-defined consistency group name to the table. So now that's a column you can add or hide on the session overview panel. And the real goal here is that we've added a few features in the past where you can define a user-defined consistency group where the same name, whether it's a global mirror or hyperswap name, can be used across different sessions. And when you do that, you're on the hardware or in ZOS, you're essentially combining the sessions. Even though you're managing separately through CSM, you're combining those components on the hardware Z side. And so by adding this in the overview table, you can now see which sessions might have those same names. So an example I'm showing there, I typed in the filter 6F, so only the sessions that had a consistency group name with 6F in it are showing now, and I know that the global mirror across those sites, across those sessions, all share the same consistency group name and potentially the same hardware relationships. All right, the next one is we had a request to support Linux PPC with Little Endian. So this, very quick description. I mean, it's basically running a Linux PPC Little Endian server. You can now install either the full CSM server, or you can install the remote CSMCLI, so that you can manage an external server from a PPC Little Endian server. For this one, what we added was some login improvements for performance purposes. We found that there was a lot of logging that was done by default that we probably shouldn't have, so we kind of tried to cut back on what was necessary to limit the amount of system resources being used based off of those log files. So we did a lot of reworking, and particularly in some of these ZOS or HMC environments, we hope that this will help minimize the amount of system overhead that CSM has been causing. And for this feature, we actually added a new foresight session type. So in previous releases, we had a Metro Mirror, Global Mirror foresight session type. Well, this one is a Metro Mirror foresight session type. So it's still a multi-target solution, so same source to two different targets. However, both those targets are Metro Mirror targets. And why do we do this? Well, there some customers out there that have this kind of configuration, but they're having to manage it with multiple sessions today. And that gets quite cumbersome and confusing, and so we've combined them into a single foresight session where you have a multi-target going, but off of one of those Metro Mirror legs, you can cascade a global copy leg to do a foresight. This allows you to create a practice copy of that site sometimes, but ultimately what happens is if you do end up recovering to that remote, that H3 site in the picture, and reverse the direction of the replication, you're back in the same configuration. It's a very symmetrical solution, so you have a multi-target with a cascaded global copy, no matter which site you're running on. The solution also does support hyperswap on Z, so you can set up either leg as hyperswap as you would with a multi-target solution as well. So we hope this will help those certain customers that are managing with multiple sessions. We say foresight because it's managing 4 different replication targets. In a customer environment, if it's hyperswap, it might not physically be 4 sites. However, you have that capability, so you have the hyperswap capable to two different targets to make it a very highly available solution. And with that, that's our 6.2.7 release updates. As usual, I asked if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please open up an RFE, open up any kind of a question on, you can post a comment to this particular video or blog, but we're open to all customer suggestions, and hope this release provides a lot of features that you're looking for.